Welcome everyone, I'm Grace Kuriakanja in Ghana's capital Accra for this special episode of Africa Matters. Now, the chocolate bar you're eating or your gold earrings can probably be traced back to this country. That's because it's the world's #2 cocoa producer after Ivory Coast and the 6th largest gold producer globally, according to the World Gold Council. So this year's vote in Ghana will be closely watched by not only 34 million Ghanaians, but the continent and global industry players. 12 candidates are vying for the presidency, and to win, they need more than 50% of the vote. Otherwise, the two top contenders will head to a runoff. Now, the economy has dominated election campaigns because of record inflation that shot past 50% over the last 2 years, spiraling food and living costs and a depreciating local currency known as the cedi. About 70% of the country's income is now being used to pay its creditors after it defaulted on its $30 billion debt in 2022, forcing it to turn to the International Monetary Fund for a costly bailout. So Mahamudu Bawumia of the ruling New Patriotic Party pledges to steer the country out of ballooning public debt, local currency devaluation and spiraling inflation. But as President Akufo-Addo's deputy, he's seen as the face of the economic policy, which has left Ghanaians facing the worst economic crisis in a generation. While his main challenger, former President John Dramani Mahama of the National Democratic Congress Party, says he'll create jobs, stabilize the local currency, and renegotiate the terms of a $3 billion IMF bailout. However, he has been blamed for chronic power shortages and economic instability and accused of political corruption during his past presidency. A recent Afrobarometer survey shows that nearly half of all Ghanaians say unemployment is their biggest problem and they want the government to fix it immediately. Government data indicates that about 1.9 million Ghanaians are unemployed, prompting discontent, particularly among young people. And although Ghana is largely peaceful, the Bawku ethnic conflict in the northeastern part of the country has flared up recently, leading to fears that armed groups from neighbouring Burkina Faso could use it to establish their presence in the area. All right, let's hear more from Professor Kobi Mensah. He is an expert in political marketing here at the University of Ghana Business School, Legon. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Absolutely, you're right, Grace.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for having us here at the campus.
Good to see you as well. I'm very happy to see you. It's a lovely period that you're in. We're in the elections and everybody is sort of gearing up for the D-Day. Good to see you in Ghana. I hope you're enjoying it.
Oh yes, so far so good. Most definitely. The elections, let's get straight into it. What should be the priority for the incoming president of Ghana?
Well, all the polls are actually showing that the #1 priority for people, jobs and economy. So immediately the incoming government knows exactly their work. Their work is actually cut out for them because people need jobs, people need economic, social welfare, economic welfare to be taken care of. And so immediately it has to be these two priorities, of course. How do you make sure that you create jobs so that people could actually better their lives, for example? How do you improve people's livelihood? People are talking about salaries, people are talking about cost of living, people are talking about taxes. Companies are complaining that there are quite a lot of nuisance taxes that they think that the government has to deal with. And so I think that immediately the government that is coming actually has their work cut out for them. They have to make sure that they're putting in plans to actually create jobs. And I think the two political parties have actually spoken about that. One is talking about 24-hour economy, where they're going to actually ensure that people can have jobs, i.e. the existing jobs or even any job that has been created. Going to ensure that they have 3 shifts and 3 people doing, one job. In that case, they can actually recruit more people. The other political party is talking about digitalization as a way of increasing, the job opportunities. They're talking about, young people, getting into acquiring new skills and being able to take up, employment, even, what they call outside jobs, for example, that they can remotely take. And so all the political parties know that, yes, the most important is about job creation. And so they're getting their act to it. And I'm sure that they know that immediately when they come to power, they have to get the ball rolling on job creation.
Right, right. Let's talk about the economy. I mean, we have to talk about that because if you ask me from an outsider's perspective, that is the key issue. I mean, for the first time, we saw Ghana default on paying its loan in 2022. For the first time, we saw inflation at an all-time high of 54% in 2022. And even now, the inflation in November is at 23%, an increase from 22% in October. Surely the economy is at a crisis. I mean, what should the incoming president do particularly about the economy, which basically just drives everything?
Absolutely. I mean, it's right observation that you actually, mentioned, the issues that we have. Increasingly, people are worried about the cost of living. For example, people are worried about the exchange rate. People are worried, particularly about corruption, because, and then, of course, the the economic issues are actually impacted heavily by corruption. So I think that immediately government want to, sort of assure people about how they're going to tackle the leakages in the system, that people won't feel that indeed they're not actually listening, but rather they're actually making sure that they can do a lot more to get people on the track. So one, as you tackle the job issues to improve their livelihood, as you tackle the forest exchange, etc., you're also making sure that you are sealing or you are taking charge of the corruption issues that actually bedevil this country. People want accountability. People who have actually stolen money, people want you to retrieve them. People want to make sure that you're dealing with nuisance taxes so that the corporations can actually work. So there are quite a lot of things. Don't forget, people have been called upon, especially people on retirement. They've been called upon to help this country through the DDEP. People have lost their livelihood. They've lost their money. And so if you come into power and you don't show your commitment from the part of the government, that is that you're making sure that people are actually being called upon to return the money, those who have been caught, those who have actually been suspected and have been investigated, and making sure that you could retrieve the assets that people have actually bequeathed to themselves. I think that they wouldn't be happy with you. So I think, yes, the government has a lot to do from the economic perspective to improve the lives of the people.
Let's talk about another issue which is key in this election, which is galamsey, illegal mining. I mean, it's terrible, for lack of a better word, because experts have been saying that if it continues, if nothing is done, Ghana could import water by 2030. Can you imagine? Can you believe it? So what should be done? Because attempts have been made, I understand, by previous administrations to curb it, but nothing really has materialized. Absolutely. So what do we do to stop this?
In fact, it's a very huge issue. I mean, since we were young, we were kids, we knew that the illegal mining, galamsey, popularly called, had been, but it hadn't been at a scale like this, and it looks like, government upon government have taken their eye off the ball, and we think that they have to seize the opportunity. They have to take the opportunity of this awareness that people actually, have become, to take charge of the situation. Now, currently, as we speak, we have, people, foreign people coming in, for illegal mining at a very large scale that we never saw before. People started mining from the water bodies that we never saw before. And I think that this awakening means that the government has to actually take charge. And one of the drivers, for this illegal mining is lack of jobs, lack of employment, because the unemployment rate in Ghana is increasing very high, especially in areas that we have this illegal mining going on. So exactly. So I think that when the government start taking charge, making sure that they're putting in place for job creation, and then of course putting in place processes, measures to deal with the illegal mining, to deal with galamsey, and then also particularly reclaiming the water bodies and reclaiming the land. I think that they can actually put the confidence back into the system. But at the moment, people are very much unsure of government's performance in terms of dealing with illegal mining, galamsey. But I suppose when they put the measures in place, people will start believing that indeed, we can solve our own problems.
Right. Okay, Prof, before I let you go, let's shift gears and talk about Ghana's African and foreign policy. Depending on who wins this election, is it going to change? Is it likely to change? And if so, how?
I think that we have always been at the forefront of African issues. I mean, Ghana being the first country in the sub-Sahara to achieve independence, we've always been the black star. Unfortunately, we took a little bit of in a backseat, as a result of our own challenges. Perhaps somebody would say the orientation of the existing, administration as well. But of course, if depending on the two political parties, one of the center left, one is the center right, perhaps one of them is much more Pan-African, oriented, for example, and so we probably would see Ghana at the forefront of the African issues, taking the lead as we used to be. But in the meantime, I think that because of our own internal issues, the Pan-African, kind of conversation, the foreign policy where Ghana actually lead the conversation regarding Africa, took a toll because of our own, economic issues, etc. But I'm looking forward to a completely new approach to dealing with the international world, to dealing with the rest of Africa. And then, of course, making sure that we are at the forefront of foreign policy, for example, when it comes to Pan-Africanism.
All right, thank you. Still in Ghana, where the top priority for the incoming president will be to fix the ailing economy and restructure the country's crippling debt, Brenda Radido reports on this defining issue for Ghanaians.
Most Ghanaians are struggling with a high cost of living, and they are clear on what they want the next president to focus on.
The new government that is coming, whether A or B or C, anybody who is coming, they should wake up with the economy so that we can be free. Everybody can enjoy. But if the economy is high, we can't do anything. So we are begging the new government that is coming, they should work out with the economy for us.
The annual rate of inflation peaked to over 54% in December 2022. Even though it has come down, prices of food and basic goods have continued to rise sharply. President Akufo-Addo's second and final term in office faced a myriad of challenges, spawning an economic crisis that forced a $3 billion deal with the International Monetary Fund to manage Ghana's public debt. It cost the country more than 70% of its income just to service it 2 years ago. But even though it has come down to nearly $51 billion, efforts by the government to raise funds through treasury bills failed as investors shunned what was once seen as a haven for financial investments.
The economy is too hard. So if he can do something about it and he will release more money and jobs for the youth, we appreciate it.
Official statistics show that 1 in every 3 young Ghanaian is unemployed, and they're all hoping that the next president in Africa's largest gold producer will turn the fortunes around. Brenda Radido, Africa Matters.
Now, Ghana is the world's #2 producer of cocoa, a key ingredient in chocolate, but many farmers make less than $1 a day despite the record rise in chocolate prices in the global market. And they say they'll vote with their feet in this selection, as Yunus Demiroglu reports.
Cocoa farmers in Ghana are under a lot of stress. The economy has had a big impact on their livelihoods, and their vote hinges on one thing.
If they give me that fertilizer to put my farms, I'm going to vote for them. But if I didn't get it, I know they don't want to do it. So I will change my heart.
Around 2 million voters depend on the cocoa industry. That's about 11% of the total electorate, which is enough to swing the election. The ruling New Patriotic Party has raised the price of cocoa during its term, but Ghana's cedi currency has also depreciated, and they're demanding their share of the record-high cocoa prices globally.
Cocoa farmers are now enlightened. We know what is happening in the global cocoa market.
Ghana's cocoa production peaked in 2021 with 1 million metric tons. Since then, its production has dipped to its lowest in decades due to climate change, crop diseases, and illegal mining.
We are begging that whoever wins the elections should raise the price. Cocoa farming is hard labor. It's tiring. Before cocoa gets to the buyer, you are well exhausted. They should help us with things like fertilizer, cutlass, Wellington boots, and other implements to make the work easier. As they say, no cocoa, no Ghana, and we are willing to work to make cocoa sector sustainable, but they have to help us.
Many of the farmers who plan to vote for the opposition are displeased with COCOBOD, the state regulator. COCOBOD's administrative spending has tripled since 2018, even as cocoa production fell. They say many government programs are not awarded through competitive bidding, and accuse it of rolling back free fertilizer distribution for farmers, which could determine who will be the next leader for the next 4 years. Yunus Demiroğlu, Africa Matters.
Dozens of people have been killed and hundreds more are fighting for their lives in renewed clashes in Bawku, a border town in northeastern Ghana that's close to Togo and Burkina Faso. Gunfire erupted last month following the return of a rival chief who had been in exile since his controversial installation last year. Rolling Sikamam traveled there and brings us this report.
The Mamprusi and Kusasi ethnic groups in Bawku have been grappling with decades-long chieftaincy and communal conflicts. This time, the return of Mamprusi's chief, Alhaji Seidu Abagri from exile, has sparked renewed clashes after a court lifted an arrest warrant against him.
Government pretended to issue a warrant of arrest through the action in the High Court in Bolgatanga. And over 1 year, they didn't pick him, while that warrant was valid. Why didn't they pick him?
Amid the volatility, 80-year-old Fatima Ali has been forced to survive on her own. Her family managed to flee, leaving her to her fate.
I am going to buy medicine and food and also sew my dress. What can we do? We are only looking up to God to ensure peace.
Many people have been injured, homes have been torched, and businesses have folded. The once vibrant and bustling border town is now a shadow of its former self, with the economy on its knees, homes in ruins, and life upended. Those with nowhere to go say they are trapped in their homes. Barakisu's husband was killed in October. Thus, despite a government's dusk to dawn curfew imposed last month to try and contain the violence.
My husband was coming from work and was shot. I rushed out and called the family, but we couldn't help because of the curfew. We watched him struggle and die. The children keep asking about him, but I can't tell them.
Residents estimate about 100 people have been killed this year alone.
One driver who happened to pick students to send them to school, first-year students who were reporting. The driver was shot and the students were asked to go out of the car, and the driver was burned to ashes with all the belongings of the students.
Many travelers have reportedly been killed and vehicles burned in the neighbouring towns. Both Kusasis and Mamprusis accuse each other for the killings.
Walawale has become a battleground for the massacre of Kusasis. Block the road, conduct searches, and then remove people who are Kusasis and kill them.
Women are demanding an end to the killings. They blame British colonialists for introducing secular political authority and chieftaincy that have led to ongoing ethnic and land conflicts. And experts warn that terrorist groups in Burkina Faso could exploit Ghana's porous northern border and cause a further instability. Rolling Sikamam, Africa Matters, Bawku, northeastern Ghana.
Now, the fate of Burkina Faso refugees fleeing attacks in their home country to seek refuge in northeastern Ghana hangs in the balance as tensions rise in Bawku. Now, the area is grappling with chieftaincy and ethnic conflict that has claimed hundreds of lives, leaving the refugees with the uncertainty of where to go next if the worst happens. Rolling Sikamam reports.
Benedicta is due to give birth in a few weeks. They fled the insecurity in Burkina Faso and settled in Sapeliga, a host community in Bawku West in northern Ghana. She now lives in a makeshift compound with her 6 children and other family. They do not want to live in the legal refugee camp because they say conditions there are miserable. But she worries that her children will grow up in yet another conflict zone as ethnic tension in Bawku leads to spreading violence.
We thought we had escaped violence and found peace. Just when we had become used to this environment, now we have to start thinking of another possible displacement. Where do we go if the conflict gets here?
At the refugee settlement, 11-year-old Sawadugu Martin is taking his education seriously. He tells me he wants to join the army to fight and protect his country as well as vulnerable groups, including women and children. A 2022 report by the UN's refugee agency, UNHCR, shows that more than 15,000 refugees from Burkina Faso had crossed into northern Ghana due to the escalating armed conflict affecting the Sahel since 2022.
They came to our village, slaughtering people, including children. We ran to another community and they attacked there as well. I managed to escape with my pregnancy, which I delivered on the way, but lost the baby. Nowhere back home is safe. I will remain in Ghana.
They are living in 9 host communities within the Kusang traditional area, and their numbers are growing due to widespread attacks from insurgent groups and militia, as well as food insecurity. Over there is Burkina Faso. The communities in that region have endured some of the deadliest attacks, and the survivors are now seeking refuge in Ghana. However, as the Bawku conflict escalates, they find themselves caught up in it, and the clashes are spreading. The government has deployed heavy security with a focus on locking down the country's borders. Officials say they are doing their best to protect the refugees.
We always try to talk to them because the place is not safe. They should be careful with their movements. Because they are new, they don't know the terrain very well. So I actually ask them to limit their movement in order not to enter into a zone that will not be comfortable for them.
Be that as it may, fears among the displaced are growing, and the uncertainty of where to go next if violence escalates lingers in their minds. Rolin Sikamam, Africa Matters, Bawku West, Northern Ghana.
In Ghana's capital, Accra, the global phenomenon of fast fashion is leaving a deep, lasting footprint. While second-hand clothes are very affordable, there are also overwhelming local communities with textile waste. Elias After reports on creative efforts to tackle the problem.
About 2 miles from Kantamanto Market in Accra lies Old Fadama, a once vibrant and thriving community now drowning in discarded fast fashion. Piles of textile waste have replaced pristine sands, and the local economy is suffering.
Although second-hand clothing is not expensive, it is causing problems for us. If nobody buys them, where are they disposed at? They are not disposed of well, and they are not even burned, but are thrown into the Korli Lagoon, which then goes into the sea. This affects our work.
Ghana imports millions of used garments every week. The OR Foundation works to reduce the environmental impact of the clothing industry.
Over time, the fast fashion has really taken over as a dominant mode of production, which is characterized here in Kantamanto as higher volumes of lower quality goods, which means that from the OR Foundation's research, of the 15 million garments we see coming in weekly, on average 40% will leave the market as waste.
The Foundation's OWO Festival celebrates creative solutions to this crisis. Designers repurpose discarded textiles into wearable art.
Some of these fabrics are too heavy, you can't even use it as a cover, bed sheets or something. So instead of allowing it to choke our gutters and also landing in our beaches and our landfills, I tried to use it to create something like a pump, a jacket or something, to repurpose it for us to use it again.
There's always life in old clothing. You shouldn't dump your clothing. You can keep them, upcycle them, let them, we can make them look new again.
Elias Havju, Africa Matters.
That's our show this week. Share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode, or ideas on what you'd like us to cover on YouTube or on X using the hashtag Africa Matters. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me, Grace Korea Kanja, in Accra, Ghana.